Let's get a quick take on Governor John Hickenlooper's recent appearance on Meet the Press. During the interview, Hickenlooper was unsure of whether Attorney General Jeff Sessions would address Colorado's recreational marijuana industry. Patty Cahoon of Westward, clearly Jeff Sessions has more things to do this week than to bother Colorado or any other state with legalized recreational marijuana. But do you think it will eventually be on his to-do list?
Well, I would hope not. Let's hope Trump holds to the states' right issue. I would think a bigger enemy of the Trump administration is Russia than Colorado, but it does look right now that they are focusing on us. Sessions wasn't deterred by whatever John Hickenlooper said on Meet the Press on Sunday, because he addressed a group of attorneys general later in the week and said the exact same thing, that he's going to be looking at what's going on in Colorado.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Governor Hickenlooper seemed to make the point during the interview with Meet the Press that because the law is in our Constitution, that might help one way or the other. What do you think?
Unfortunately, it does not help. In a federal statute defeats a state constitution as a matter of law in the courts. But sometimes state resistance succeeds even in the long run as a practical matter. And that goes back all the way to state resistance to the Sedition Act with the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, where they didn't win court cases, but they did establish the principle of freedom of speech and the right to criticize the president. Jeff Sessions does not have a lot of extra political capital to spend these days, especially on breaking one of Donald Trump's campaign promises. And I'd say good for Governor Hickenlooper for standing up not only for the marijuana provision in our state constitution, but for the overarching principle in Article 2, Section 3 of our Bill of Rights, which says the people of Colorado have the sole and exclusive right of governing themselves. Very few state constitutions have such strong language. Ours does, so good for our governor for being faithful to his constitutional oath.
Penfield Tate joins us, attorney with QTAC Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. Public opinion is not tilted towards the Trump administration on this topic. Do you think other Republicans in Congress and in the Senate really want the Trump administration to be going after recreational marijuana out of all the different issues that are on their plate?
You know, I don't think they do, but the problem they're faced with is not only the Attorney General's antipathy towards marijuana and drugs in general, whether it be recreational or medicinal, but in the address to Congress, the president talked about dealing with drugs. To me, it almost felt like he was reviving the war on drugs again, because he mentioned this several times. The interesting dynamic's going to be those Republicans from states that have approved either personal use of marijuana and or medicinal, how they respond to the administration, because many of them, if they hold to Republican principles, are going to say, our states have decided to do these things, you need to back down. And I agree with everybody else. It's not like Attorney General Sessions has a lot of political capital to work with these days to pursue this sort of agenda.
Natasha Gardner, articles editor of 5280 magazine. Meet the Press was not just about marijuana with Governor Hickenlooper. He had talked about presidential, or his lack of presidential aspirations. What did you think of Governor Hickenlooper's performance?
Well, I think what's interesting with this this interview is it was a series of interviews that he was doing when he was in D.C. For meetings. His tone on the MSNBC interview, which was a few days earlier, was a little different, a little more forceful, talking about the conflict that would arise specifically related to marijuana. I think in general we're so used to the governor that we're used to his quirk. It's interesting to see him on a national stage. There were a lot of maybes, a lot of classic sort of Hickenlooper statements, and particularly on the marijuana issue. I think that's sometimes a good and a bad thing. And to pull sort of a Hickenlooper and show both sides here, I think that there are some people who say, well, that's great. As an individual, he has never really been in support. He's not in support yet. He's standing by what he believes. But there's still this sense of, well, you're the governor of Colorado. When would you get behind this? When would you support this part of the state constitution that has been beneficial to our economy, to a lot of individuals? So seeing him on that national stage play that role that he plays, or playing out the same sort of script that he plays out here, was interesting to see.